Well, welcome everyone again. My name is Ivana Alfred, and I'm the Knowledge and Education Manager here at ITDP Global. Again, I welcome you all to this session. We are joined today to discuss walkability projects, impacts, and tactics from three regions. And we see how they create more walkable conditions that have trickling benefits for the people, the cities, and the environment. As we know, walkability consists of pedestrian infrastructure and the urban fabric, and cities around the world are demonstrating pursuit to support walking, which lays the foundation for the mobility ecosystem. So in this session, we want to make the case for walkability and also share some best practices and methodologies with the audience joining us today. We have an exciting panel, which includes transport community representatives and international organizations. And so in the somewhat order of appearance, I'm going to just introduce the panel to you, starting with Qiuyang Lu, who is a transport engineer from ITDP China. Qiuyang leads the Walk and Cycle COP, meaning Community of Practice here at ITDP. And she will be doing some brief introduction around today's topic. She will also moderate the roundtable discussion. Hello, Qiuyang. Next, we'll go to Mexico region to hear from the mayor of San Pedro Garza Garcia, Miguel Trevino. He will talk about some of the motivations and priorities guiding the walkability projects and investments in his city. Welcome, Mayor Trevino. We're glad that you have joined us today.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much. Then we'll go to the India region. We'll hear from two ITDP colleagues, A.V. Venugopal, who goes by Venu, program manager for the Healthy Streets and Partnerships at ITDP India, and Madeline Lieberman, who is an associate for the monitoring and evaluation at ITDP Global. Venu will share a little bit on the regional walkability initiatives, and Madeline will talk about the impact evaluations of footpath improvement project in Chennai, India. We'll also share an exciting actually launch or upcoming launch of a report stemming from this evaluation, and I'll share link to this anticipated report that's going to be coming up later this week, but I will share that in the chat where you'll be able to download this report. And last but not least, finally, we will go to Africa region and hear from Gasho Abera, Active Mobility Manager at ITDP Africa, who will share about the state of walkability in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and Kisumu, Kenya, followed by Jordi Bosch, who is the active and sustainable mobility expert at the UN Habitat. He will talk about UN Habitat's efforts to improve walkability in the Africa region, also including some of the initiatives from Addis Ababa and Kisumu. So with this introduction of the panel, I'm going to call upon Qiuyang to do a brief framing for today's topic.
Thank you, Ivona, and hello, everyone. I am Qiuyang, and today I will be moderating the discussion session. But before that, let me give you a very brief introduction on why we are talking about the walkability and what ITDP has been doing on this recently. Walkability benefits our people and cities in many ways. It is a foundation for all types of transportation. As a form of physical exercise, walking will make people healthier mentally and physically. And walking activities can also enhance the emotional bonds between each other, thereby benefiting the society. Walkable streets attract more visitors to shops, boosting local economies, and people will also shift from driving to more sustainable transportation modes because of walkability. The graph on the right is from a recent research, and it plotted the transportation mode share in major cities in Europe. The x-axis is the mode share of walking, and y-axis is public transport. The red dots mean more car dependency, and green ones mean less car dependency. You can see the positive correlation is evident. With more people walking, it will bring more people taking public transport. And another interesting finding is that only making more public transport and walking more attractive, we can reduce people's car dependency. But walking and public transport alone is not sufficient to change our driving habits. While the picture on the left-hand side is the picture I took in Beijing. It showcases effective integration of walkable footpaths, shared bikes, and public transport. This connectivity strengthens the ecosystem, the system of the sustainable transport systems. While after understanding the benefits of walkability, we also need to acknowledge there existed tremendous challenges. For example, measuring and evaluating the level of walkability are difficult. Many projects often overlook the investments in walking infrastructure, and coordinating efforts across different departments can be difficult as well. So in today's webinar, we will be sharing with you the practices in different regions based on our experiences. Next slide, please. In this slide, I will be sharing with you what ITDP has been doing in recent years. We already made a lot of efforts to promote the walkability. This includes the Pedestrian First, an online tool with a set of indicators measuring the walkability at the city level, neighborhood level, and street levels. It will give you recommendations after you finish the online survey. We also developed the TOD standards in the middle. It sets 8 principles for sustainable urban development. It focuses on the maximizing the benefits of public transport and walking and cycling. We used these TOD standards, evaluated many cities already globally, and this also includes cities in China. You can find these tools and reports online on our websites. Within this standard, you can also find many real-world cases with the best practices around the globe. And also, in this year, we launched the Atlas of Sustainable City Transport. This is an online data dashboard with interactive map displaying indicators of sustainable and inclusive urban passenger transport. You can access this web and this online tool also in our website. So I will be stopping here and hand over to you, Mayor.
Should I help with screen sharing or
yes.
I think you are already perfect. Showing up the presentation. The first option to present. Great.
Hi, well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but the presentation is still loading actually for the full screen. Let's see if it's going to come up.
Well, while it's ready, I am Mayor of San Pedro Garza Garcia. With me here in the office is Javier Leal. He's the director of the institute in charge of planning here in San Pedro. And we have been going through a major transformation for the last 6 years in a city that is within a metropolitan area that for the last at least 50 years has moved to a city in which most of the people moves by car. Just to give you an idea, in the metropolitan area,
I am going to screen share for you, Mayor.
In the metropolitan area, a little bit over 0.5% of the population moves by car. And in San Pedro Garza Garcia, San Pedro is this small municipality within the metro area. When we came to office 6 years ago, 70% of the people moved by car. Very few people walk in San Pedro. And I remember when I was in campaign for the first election in 2018, sidewalks and walkability was not part of the public conversation at all. All the conversation was around how to move faster by car. This is a number that, with more clarity explains the problem we live. I used to tell the community when I was in town hall meetings trying to get attention to my campaign. I won as an independent after 30 years of this city being governed by the same political party. And what I used to tell them is that...
Can you go back one?
Yes, can you go back? What I was telling the community is that in this municipality, every person, including the 2-month baby, has one car and the 5th part of another one. So that's the scale of the problem we have. And as time went by, sidewalks were disappearing, both because they were not planned properly, and also because private invasion to the sidewalks. And in some parts of the municipality, that has very severe health consequences, because since part of the city is in a hill, the aging community, once the sidewalk is invaded, they can't go really out of their houses to walk. So we have a very big problem. The next. So what we had to do is simultaneously, both pictures are of San Pedro Garza Garcia, is to stop investing in roads expansion, because that would only motivate people buying more cars, and invest in sidewalks and in green spaces to make the public space much more attractive. And this that I'm telling hadn't been done in the last 30 years. So this sidewalk that you see in the right part of the screen, it was all invaded, even though it's one of the main streets in the east-west direction. Next slide. So once we started this transformation in my re-election campaign, this was my proposal. In the down part of the screen is the south, and is uphill, so it's not the optimal site to make a 15-minute district. But in the area where you see the more population density, is also the part of the municipality that is least steep, so we don't have that much of uphill street, so it has better characteristics for moving forward. So we made big investments, particularly in Casco, that is the historical part of the municipality, and Centro Valle, and it was a big battle all along a year and a half. Many people was very angry at us, but this was needed since more than 30 years ago. Next. So mainly, I mean, if we have to synthesize what it was important to do at the same time is to construct accessible and walkable and comfortable sidewalks that were all invaded, get sometimes into fights with the, with the people, the businesses that were invading the sidewalks, but to liberate that space, to allow human-scale buildings, because in these areas that you saw in the map before, their buildings were not allowed. So even if you had sidewalks, since the city is so spread up, there was no people to use them. The people had to move in cars because we were all there. So we changed the urban codes to have 4 and even 6-story buildings and with smaller apartments to make them more accessible, and also green infrastructure in the surroundings. So parks, beautiful parks is like the main attribute or the main attractive of this government, is what people is more happy about. So you have walkable sidewalks and you have a place to go. And particularly in these areas where we made the most important transformation investment. So just to give you an idea, this is not the historical part, but the spot you see in the center part of the map that I just showed you, and this was the city just a year and a half ago. Huge streets, no way to walk, very few trees. Well, the cables in the sky, many signs, and this is the. Can you show the next? The next. This is that same street right now. So this happened in a year and a half, and it was. I mean, it looks very dramatic, the change, but the battle was very, very tough, very tough. Both the people that didn't want us to leave, to take out space for cars, but also because of all the inconveniences. We also fix everything that is under the street. So the sewage, the water, we have to construct the tubes where the cables go. So it was a big challenge, the construction. Next. This is what I call the Doomsday Street. This is the street of the end of times. It's a horrible street. We have even the trees don't belong to this area. We shouldn't have palm trees. That it doesn't belong to this area. Those are trees that are for beaches, and we have no trees. And it's a huge street, and it stops it finishes in a stop. So it has no purpose. Before we transform this street, people use it as a racing street. Why? Because you have a lot of space. So on Saturdays you could see young people making races there, and it was really chaotic and this is the street now. So it has gone through a big change. It's a park. It's almost a park street, and we have festivals on the weekends, and right now people is very happy, and many new businesses in the area. So we are receiving a lot of requests to make new businesses, restaurants, cafes. It's a much more attractive part of the city. Next. well, this is the same area. Next. Well, I think as almost everywhere in the world, bike lanes have been a big trouble. I also want to say that we have received very good support from ITDP Mexico since we started with the first bike lane in this government term, and it is very important because here in this area that its name is Distrito Centro Valle, now you have really complete streets. You have good sidewalks, a line for bikes and also a car lane. So that's very broadly the transformation we have gone through in the last years, and this is how we understand walkable streets. Not only the obvious, they have opportunity to for walking and bike and car mobility, but also to have better economic activity, the sense of community. Since we started the planning, we have been talking with the community about what we are doing and what it is important to have a better relationship with the environment. More trees, we need more trees. As Monterrey is the metro area, it has become a city that is very heavily polluted in the air. So we have to transform our cities to transform them into more walkable cities, also to lower the pollution, air pollution. So it has important health consequence, resilience, to have absorption areas and identity. The historical center, we didn't see pictures of how we transformed the historical area of the municipality, but it's very beautiful, and it's also for the people that lives here in the historical downtown, it has been very important because part of the project is how to preserve our historical architecture while we change the streets to make them more walkable, and also the safety. People in these new areas feel very safe to walk and to move by bike. So basically, this is what we have done in the last few years here in San Pedro.
Thank you, Mayor Trevino. Thank you so much for this few takeaways on what you have been doing in your city. I will definitely have some questions for you, but let's move into my team from Global and ITDP India, and I'm just going to screen share your PowerPoint. Just give me a second, but feel free to come on stage.
Thanks, Ivona. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have a great crowd of a lot of champions. Just waiting for the screen to come up. It was inspiring to hear from the mayor, and similar to how he mentioned, even in Indian cities, it's been a big battle, if I may say, to change the perspective from streets that are designed for vehicles to streets that are designed for people. If we can go to the next few slides. So this is an image from the northern part of India in Srinagar, where after years of advocacy by many organizations and individuals, streets in Indian cities have started creating pedestrian priority projects. However, there is a long way to go. Next. Some more photos from different cities in India. In Bhubaneswar, a good example of connection with public transportation infrastructure. In Coimbatore, more from a health initiative perspective. Next. This is from the city of Bengaluru in the state of Karnataka, where there is a good network of cycling infrastructure as well. Next. If you could hit next 2 times more, Ivona, thank you so much. So ITDP India, over the last 3 years in particular, has been supporting cities across the country through national initiatives to develop institutional reforms, to develop long-term plans, network plans, and also a lot of events like you see here on the screen to build the support of the people through cycling training camps for women, happy streets or open streets concepts, the next slide. And very importantly, peer learning, because a lot of learnings that cities have can be shared with one another, and it can fast track the learnings for new cities. So we have been lucky to co-host a lot of online and offline workshops with interactive games and other tools like site visits so that it can fast track the work in other cities. Next slide. And finally, what you see in the slides ahead is that cities have understood the importance of designing streets for people. This is from a city of Kohima. So for all these images to follow, you can see which city it is from at the bottom. So a lot of users use streets to access opportunities, especially school children. Next. These are some data points from the cities of Jabalpur and Newtown, Kolkata, about how street transformations have improved the sense of safety, both road safety as well as personal safety because of the intervention. Next. Also because of serving as a first and last mile access, especially for women and even other groups, how it facilitates their increased radius of access and access to livelihood opportunities. This is a photo from the city of Srinagar again. Next. Allied is a very important point about the improvement for businesses, where by default, because of the increased footfall, not only do businesses increase, which is mentioned by these two data points from Jabalpur and Chennai, but also property prices, rental values, etc., have seen a positive growth as well. Next. Health is also an important factor which all of us understand, and by default, when a street transformation happens, we've seen a lot more people use the space either for leisure activities or to use the space for commute towards getting to a bus stop or commuting by work as well. Next. And finally, cities, states, and the national government has realized that investing money in sustainable transport initiatives like walking, cycling infrastructure helps them achieve their national as well as sustainable development goals itself. This is a photo from a city in the east of India called Newtown, Kolkata. Next. In the next few slides, I'll just set the landscape of a particular city and its journey, a city called Chennai, which is in the south of India in the state of Tamil Nadu. Madeline will take over, post the same to share more about the impacts. So Chennai began in 2013, where there was a need for a mind shift change. So it required a lot of capacity development exercises. It required site visits. And Chennai became the first city in India to adopt what is called as a non-motorized transport policy in 2014. Next. Post which, understanding the importance of having good designers and capacity building, developing teams came into the picture. And a substantial amount of the city corporation's budget started being allocated for footpath transformations. Next. As you see, gradually a network approach of creating networks, be it arterial roads where buses were plying or neighborhood roads which connected smaller institutions and schools started developing. And over the years of 2014 and 2020, nearly 170 kilometers of transformations have happened. Next. So this is one iconic project. I'll share the link for more details of a project called as Pedestrian Plaza. The before and after image is shown. It's 1.4 kilometers in stretch, and a space that was taken over by vehicles at large, pollution, noise, and other issues was reclaimed for the people. And there were other streets in parallel that started happening across the city, around school zones, etc. And this catalyzed the scale up. The next slide. Through a project called as the Complete Streets Project, it looks at transforming 6 neighborhoods across the city of Chennai, and it connects transit stations, it connects schools, it connects low-income neighborhoods, and design consultants from across the country were hired to develop designs for this. Next. This is the last slide in terms of funding and financing. It's an innovative model called the World Bank Chennai City Partnership, which is funding this project, which looks at not only funding a project directly, but it also looks at strengthening the institution through policy, hiring, and other measures, as well as developing financial sustainability services as well. With that, I hand it over to Madeline for the next section.
Thank you so much for framing that, Venu. So I'll be speaking a little bit about our efforts to monitor and evaluate the impacts of new footpaths and footpath improvements. So here are some highlights from this impact evaluation of the footpaths in Chennai, which we will be launching in the next few days. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And this evaluation adds really important empirical evidence that all of this work that Venu and the other presenters have described has important and tangible impacts on people's lives and on society. So in this impact evaluation, 4 study areas were chosen out of the more than 100 kilometers of footpaths that were designed and built in Chennai from 2013 to 2019. And so some of the goals were to evaluate the impacts of these footpaths on the quality of life and the environment, and to demonstrate the importance of investing in footpaths. Next slide, please. So a couple of different methods were used to get a holistic understanding of the impacts of the footpaths. So the first user intercept surveys were used, and 424 pedestrians were stopped on the 4 study streets. Additionally, pedestrian counts were taken during peak hours. And finally, geospatial analysis. So we mapped the footpaths and determined the amount of people who can access them. Next slide, please. So to get very briefly into the methods for estimating climate and air quality impacts, the user intercept surveys asked people what mode they would have used if the footpaths didn't exist or were very poor quality. So that helps to demonstrate the shift from other modes to walking and the emissions that could have been avoided by those modes. And another important component of that was extrapolating the pedestrian counts to understand the distance walked on the footpaths. So all of this together helps to calculate the change in kilometers traveled by each mode, and then the emissions that were avoided from climate pollutants and air quality pollutants. Next slide, please. So I'll go through quickly here some of the impacts that were looked at in this evaluation. First, climate impacts, as I briefly mentioned. And then next, equity impacts in terms of gender, income, and disability. Accessibility impacts. Health, in terms of reduction of emissions and also increased physical activity, and also economic impacts in terms of money saved. So to get a little bit deeper into some of these results, for climate, we found that between 4,200 and 12,000 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions are prevented annually by these new footpaths, which is equivalent to taking about 1,000 to 3,000 cars off the road for 1 year. And on the right, you can see a little breakdown of some of the key contributors to those emissions prevented. Next slide, please. Additionally, another major finding was that 95% of the survey respondents believe that the streets are safer overall in terms of both personal security and road safety after the improvements. So that includes both men and women, and a large majority also believe that the streets are safe after 10 p.m. and also safe for children. The surveys also revealed a couple of reasons for people feeling unsafe, which included lack of other people, poor lighting, and vehicles parked on the sidewalks. Next slide, please. Additionally, the footpaths increased accessibility so that 11% of the population we found lives within a 300-meter walk of the new footpaths, and the project also improved access to many bus stops. Next slide, please. So this is a very brief summary, and I encourage you to check out the report for more details in the next few days. Ivona has shared the link. And just finally, all of this has shown that investing in walkability leads to tangible and intangible benefits for users and society. So it's important that we have comprehensive impact evaluations to highlight all of these benefits and make the case for walkability improvements. And finally, analyzing these benefits and the impacts by social group to promote equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Venu and Madeline. And then finally, we move to the Africa region. I think, Gasha, you'll begin. Please, Fisher. Thank you. And great, it's working. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. So I will be speaking about walkability success stories from the African cities. So we have two cases now from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and Kisumu, Kenya. So these two cities basically have done different intervention in terms of improving their walking and cycling facilities. So as the previous presenters were showing the before and after, so we used to face the same challenge into these two cities where there was a lack of in terms of the walking and cycling, there was a lot of issues that was observed. So one of the study that we have conducted in Addis Ababa is the preparation of the non-motorized transport strategy, which was launched in 2019. So this strategy helps to show the city in terms of some of the challenges that we are facing in our walking and cycling facility. So previously, during the study time, we have done different data collection. So this data collection also helps the city decision makers to understand what's going on within their city and also to allocate appropriate funding in terms of improving the walking and cycling facility. So during the studies, some of the findings from the site visits and also data collection, as you can see, some of our walkways were missing quality pavements that allows pedestrians to use carriageways, risking their life by walking on the driveways. And there were cases that we have observed where a lot of people were demanding station points and places for waiting public transport, but still they are also risking their life. Cyclists, as you can see on the bottom photo here, they were using carriageways as a mode to travel from their origin to destination. There were different streets that were missing street lights. So that was also one of the risks, like especially for women and elderly. They were not feeling safe in terms of traveling around the city. The other major issue was the road safety issue, because Ethiopia was, especially in Addis Ababa, we have this high level of traffic crash rates. So that was one of the justification in terms of for the city to improve its walking and cycling facility. So some of the studies, for example, in terms of assessing the existing infrastructure shows in terms of footpath widths, for example, there were some selected areas in the city, especially in the city center area where high pedestrian volume was observed. So we tried to map out the actual footpaths that exist on the ground. So this indicates, for example, the maps that you can see with the reds shows the lowest or no footpaths at all in some of these major locations within the city. And we have also been trying to check, or whenever there is a footpath, there are also obstructions, either permanent or temporary obstructions. So we are also able to evaluate those. And vending is also one of the activities that happens on the streets. And we have been also documenting like where there is a demand for vending, where they exist, and they are obstructing footpaths. In terms of those details were checked, and in terms of footpath condition, whenever they exist, we try to see if they are in a good condition, moderate, or if there is no footpath at all. So this is very important for the city, also to understand on which specific section of the streets that they need to invest. In terms of street lights, so we've done the same thing, like by going at night and try to see different areas where there is a presence of street lights not only presence, but functioning. So this, as you can see, the red ones, like most of our streets, especially in the CBD areas, they were missing street lights. So that was one of also the indicator, just as a showcase for the city to understand what's happening on there. Sheds, and in terms of street trees, that was also another survey. So there are different surveys that was done. And by sitting together with the decision makers and also especially the agencies, like for Addis Ababa, the Addis Ababa Transport Bureau was the one in charge of the non-motorized transport studies. So we have developed a strategy for 10 years, which is called the Addis Ababa Non-Motorized Transport Strategy. But that's by itself is not enough. So there was this three years period implementation plan that was needed to be prepared to help frame out the implementation into dividing into 3 years and which agency needs to do what, because it's not only a walkway upgrading or cycle track, but it also includes utility provision and other service that requires other agencies' involvement. So those all documentation was done. And in terms of the cycle network, the city also have done this study for the cycle network plan, which we've been supporting them together with the UN Habitat team. After that, we have set a target for 10 years, which helps them to develop for pedestrian improvement. We have indication like at least 600 kilometers of the streets needs to be improved, from cycle track to 100 kilometers, bike share 10,000. So all these activities was included as part of the recommendation. So the city had accepted the proposal, and the former deputy mayor of the city was also one of the person who was in charge, who was also was able to do the actual launch of the strategy. And after that, the new city mayor, and also even at the prime minister level, there is a good initiative in terms of doing a lot of improvements into this NMT mode. So these are some of the interventions that was done, including cycle street lights in some of the streets that were missing street lights. And as part of walking and cycling, there were also some recommendations. So on the ground, currently there are around 80.5 kilometers of both walking and cycling initiatives that the city is implementing. And that's also part of the development. So this was the first pilot corridor in the CBD area. And after that, around 50 kilometers of cycle tracks are currently under construction, which is also mainly led by the Prime Minister Office and the City Mayor's Office, that they have been doing a network level city development. So there has been also different car-free days. So every end of month, the city has a car-free day in different locations of the city, like 12 different areas where we have been supporting on some of them in terms of giving or creating awareness for the residents and also the road users to understand the benefits of the streets. It's like as it's been equitably to be used by pedestrians, cyclists, and also other road users. In terms of scaling up, so what we have done was also Addis Ababa is not the only city in the country. So there are different secondary cities that are also catching up in terms of population and also in terms of the urbanization. So we help them develop at the national level the non-motorized transport strategy. And also in order to do the actual implementation, so we're also been working on the actual urban street design. So as previous presenters were mentioning, the trend in most of our cities used to be guided by a design that gives more space for cars. But this urban street design will help also in terms of allocating appropriate or enough space for walking and cycling. So some other secondary cities, they have demonstrated also this walkway improvements, as you have seen. The other city in Kenya, which we have done also the sustainable urban mobility, is Kisumu. So there also data is important, and we need to understand what's happening on our city and how people are traveling. So we've conducted the pedestrian volume in different locations, the cyclist volume in different areas. So this also helps the decision makers to understand what's happening in our city and how people are traveling. And we need also to document how the existing infrastructures are currently. So that has been done. and how we are missing pedestrian crossings, street lights, as I was showing the previous Addis Ababa presentation. So those all things were mapped by just indicating the left side, showing where there is a footpath and where there is no footpath. And if there is a footpath also, so we usually recommend at least a clear width. So it's just having a footpath is not also enough. So we need to have a wider and enough footpath that allows people to travel. So that has been also mapped out. In terms of street lights, so similar to Addis, so a city-wide analysis where the team has done a survey just to find out whether the street lights are functioning well or not, or so yeah, depending on the categories. So the same thing like the NMT strategy here also, the team has identified different goals and targets what Kisumu City needs to do over the coming 10 years of this SUMP, our Sustainable Mobility Plan implementation period. So the major goals are to increase the modal share for walking and cycling, increase the public transport access, and also reduce the personal motor vehicle usage, improve road safety, which is the main concern, and also to improve the air qualities. So after that, after those indicators and after working with the city, so there were different corridors, pilot like phasings that was identified, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So since it will be hard to implement in terms of cost also, like everything at once, so the city start by doing one project, which is called Kisumu Triangle Project on the CBD area. And after that, there are different phases that the city would be doing over the next year. So in terms of cycle track, also the city had a plan which on major streets that will be a network level of cycle track development. In terms of greenway, that's also another study that was done. So as part of this Kisumu Triangle project, which I mentioned, there is this successful and good project that gives good improvements in terms of the walking facility. And this is one of the good case that we use in different cities to show it as an example on how we could improve some of our existing infrastructures. In terms of road safety and also to include access to pedestrians to cross. So they have done also this tabletop crossing or raised crossing in most of this, in this first phase of the project. They have done also in the implementation of keeping bollards to protect cars from obstructing into the walkway and also to create a more safer walking facilities. Still, there are phase 2 and phase 3, which is still undergoing that the city is doing. So this is also an indication. So yeah, just to understand more about this publication, we can also use some of this materials as a reference. Thanks, Ivan.
Great, thank you. And we'll close with Jordi with his several slides. Jordi, are you able to share?
Yes, thank you, Ivona. Warm greetings, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope you can see my screen in full mode now.
Yes, it's perfect.
My name is Jordi Bosplan. I work for UN Habitat. We also worked a lot on issues of walkability. I've seen that there's quite a large audience here in this webinar, and if this was an indicator, I think we could be very proud of the increased interest from cities and from nations that are more and more advocating for better walkability in the streets and in their countries. So at UN Habitat, we work on a lot of different fronts. The things that we do can be maybe fitted like in these 5 big pillars, considering we work a lot on policy advice and technical assistance. We also do a lot of innovative pilot projects. We participate in large events and conventions to do like global advocacy. We develop together with alone, but also together with other organizations like ITDP, like a lot of normative tools. And then we do a lot of capacity building at national level and also at local level. This time I'll focus our experience in these 2 pillars, like in innovative pilot projects and capacity building, because the rest of the speakers so far, I think they've already covered a lot of things. Many activities that I will explain are very similar to things that have been explained in different regions, but I hope that this spotlight now in Africa gives like new light also for the ones interested in the continent. So it happens in this huge continent of Africa is that sometimes in the national agendas, maybe understandably, like walkability is not on the top, one of the top priorities of the local authorities or of the governments. So we need to find a way to put these at the top of the list. And as some of the colleagues already mentioned, I think walkability offers us a great opportunity because we can frame it through different frameworks. So when we talk about walkability, we talk about climate, we talk about sustainability, we talk about health. And one of the things that we talk a lot also is about road safety. So for us, it has been very easy to work together with countries and cities that want to improve the road safety conditions on their streets. And through that, we do the work that we do we improve the walkability. So one of the examples is the Reclaiming Streets project, which is called Reclaiming Streets for Walking and Cycling in Africa. And we work together with the 5 countries that you can see highlighted in green on the right side. We work with Gashau in Ethiopia, we work in Kenya, we work in Mozambique, we work in Rwanda, and we work in Guinea. The numbers that you can see show the fatalities by 100,000 inhabitants in the country. The 26.6 is the average in Africa, but you can see that these countries are, most of them like above the average. So those are numbers that we really need to address. And how to address these numbers, like what we discovered is that through walking, like improving the walking conditions, these numbers are reduced because sadly, most of the people that is affected by these accidents are pedestrians. So how do we do this? We focus our work in different projects. So we do a lot of scaling up of group street practices. For that, we do like capacity building exercises. We assist with technical assistance to the governments that are defining things or that need some special context. We also improve on road safety frameworks. This means like we develop data collections, we'll help cities to gather data, and we develop data-based policies. Then we disseminate good practices, also like putting people together in different contexts, making them understand and learn from one to the other. I think this webinar is a good example from it. I hope there's many city representatives here learning from the examples from other cities, and hopefully this will put the new topics on the table, like in their teams, in their local teams. And finally, one thing that is also very important is like to improve the investment in safe streets. So we need to somehow strengthen these links between donors and cities. Like how can cities find the money to support these projects on walkability? Because as we already, as it has been mentioned, sometimes the issue that we have is that we don't have enough money to do that. So now I collected a few successful examples of what we have been doing in the recent years. I'll just go through them very quickly because I'm very aware of the time. But if you have any question after my presentation, always feel free to reach out. Ivona will share the presentation and I'll be happy to answer more questions. So in terms of implementation, walkability offers the opportunity to implement like a very small scale and low cost interventions and achieve huge impact, because the interventions for walking are quite easy, and straightforward. It's about introducing like a pedestrian crossing or maybe adding some signalizations. You can see on the left side the improvements that we do in the runabout in Mombasa and the coast in Kenya. And also on the right side, how we transform a city from Dandora, which is one of the neighborhoods next to the surroundings of Nairobi. This street that you see now, where you see a lot of people on the street, was not paved, it was very chaotic. So how with really low scale interventions, you can change a lot and increase a lot the quality of the streets. Then we do also a lot of piloting. One example is, if you can see like the 3 pictures from 3 different editions of the placemaking week that happens in Nairobi every year in October to celebrate the Urban October. Piloting is a very good strategy we found to support cities into advocating for a better walkability, because providing these like short-term interventions that are also very low cost, normally it's more appealing and attractive for the cities. So they are more open to test those activities, and they show, with the right monitoring and evaluation, they show the great impacts that can bring lively streets in the cities. So this is a technique that I also like to replicate and do as much as possible with cities. Then, of course, we have the capacity building part. We have the in-person and the online. Here I added a few pictures from the in-person meetings because I think the pictures are more appealing, but there's also lots of webinars and workshops that we develop, and then there's a lot of people joining to learn. We organize a lot of city exchanges, connecting with different cities representatives and bringing them together for a few days in one specific context to discuss the specificities about walkability and cycling. Two very good examples from last year were the ones we organized in Cape Town and in Lagos. I've seen here in the audience also some names that people who attended there, so I'm very happy to see these faces again. Then on the right side, you can also see two examples of different kind of capacity building that we've done. In Kisumu, in the example that Gasho mentioned before, we used the game Minecraft also with the local team to understand how the streets of the city could look differently, because basically the platform allows us to build with zero cost, like how cities could look like. And then at the bottom right, you see a meeting that we had with the city of Nakuru on developing and preparing for the new NMT phases for the city center. Besides that, I think the last example that I wanted to mention is also the great work that we've been doing with schools all over the continent. When we talk about walkability, we need to consider children. I think there has been some data show that when we assess the walkability of the streets, we might consider it safe for us, but maybe like the vulnerable users that might be children, for them is how the streets can be more harder not to face with. So we start doing these participatory approaches, visiting schools and working a lot on the areas around the schools to improve the walkability of that area, to offer enough safety and walkability, not only for everyone, but especially like for the children that go back to school every day. The pictures that you see here on the left side are from Addis and Ethiopia, from the team that Gasho leads, and from Nairobi on the right side. And that's it. So I wanted to finish my presentation with 1 minute of promotion of this new challenge that is happening in October. This is also other things that we do. We try to tackle also through innovative methods, like how to improve the walkability of the cities. And we've been working together with the Urban Living Lab Center and the World Resources Institute and the Wuppertal Institute. And for October, we will organize this challenge. We developed an app that will allow like the citizens of cities to walk around the cities and spot like the complicated, the hotspots of the threats of walkability in their neighborhoods and in their cities. And we'll try to collect this together and put this together in a platform that will allow the cities to improve for this. If you're interested in this challenge, you can register scanning the QR code. Just this will be focused now in the in the Latin America region. It will be in Spanish for now, but we're planning to do it also at the global level in English. And with that, that's it. I go back to you, Qiuyang. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and I'm open to any questions if there are some.
Thank you so much. In advance, I wanted to thank everyone for staying over the time. There's a link in the chat for with the registration to the next webinar, but I just wanted to bounce it back to Qiuyang to just ask for some closing statements for which we only have time today. But again, apologies for the time over, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And thank you all the speakers for sharing the experiences. I already see our audience are very impressed by the achievements they made at these projects. But we are running a little bit of late today, but I just want to say because we already checked the Q&A box here, what we have, what questions they have. We feel like many of you are asking like what are the challenges or barriers you are facing when you are implementing or executing these projects, and any like how did you overcome this? I saw already like someone said that the emerging transportation modes like the electric scooter, the shared micromobilities, they are taking the spaces on the sidewalks, making the pedestrians feel less safer. And like also the resistance from the citizens living nearby, because they are making more spaces for the walking and cycling, and the motorways are taking less spaces. Whether there are congestion happening afterwards, we are implementing the walkability. So this could also be so challenging, I understand. And we also mentioned that we have like the financing problems because after we redesigning and constructing the streets, the maintenance cost of the walkability or the pedestrian infrastructure could also be costly. So how do we financing the whole life cycle of this project? This could also all be the challenges. So I just want to ask our speakers today here, do you have any takeaways from the presentations? And if you have any a statement or a summary from our discussions today, just feel free to discuss. This is a very open discussion session.
Thank you. And since we're running out of time, we did run out of time. In fact, I just asked for maybe like 30 to 60-second answer for your statement / takeaway around the challenges. So whoever wants to jump in. There's a question around financing.
I just think it is important to to discuss in this kind of panel, maybe in a future panel, the political challenges of implementing these policies. It is important to see how to overcome them, to convince the community, to persuade those who oppose the measures in order to have more incentives for other political actors in other communities to have the courage to do it. So I think that the political constraints is a very important chapter of these stories.
I could probably keep it very brief from the Indian context. I would say that building on the mayor's point, good leadership that is both political as well as bureaucratic. Number two, having a good team of engineers and officials to work with the leader to make it a reality. And number three comes, if both of these elements are there, I think budgets and community engagement, everything will happen by itself. So a leadership team and the things to follow are fundamental. And I would reference this to like a sports team. If you can imagine any sports team that has won championships across time, it's because they have a very strong leadership, a very strong team, and the right vision to work on it.
Else?
Maybe I can also add like just a few thoughts. I fully support what Benno and Miguel already mentioned, and I think we should encourage cities. I've been reading now through the questions and the comments, and I totally agree with one comment that mentions that that the funding and the budgeting shouldn't be a problem, because cities allocate such an ridiculous amount of funding and budgeting for other projects, for other types of transportation, and we shouldn't be as cities or as countries we shouldn't shy off of asking too much, because what walkability brings to the cities is much more than maybe what other modes of transportation bring. So I will just encourage everyone to be brave and just put the strong terms on the table and the strong conditions, and slowly I can see that there's more and more interest from higher levels to accept to our requests. So thank you.
Anyone else want to add on? Just calling upon Madi and Tasho for your closing statements or reactions around challenges.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Qiuyang. I guess everything is mentioned. Maybe the challenge would be in terms of first the understanding maybe, and also data is important, like in terms of convincing the decision makers on what's happening. So that's a very important tool. And we need to have also champions from the decision makers, especially at a higher level. And if we have that, I guess the funding is more of reallocating what we have been doing, maybe in terms of road improvement. if we are focusing on highway, then now we should be focusing more on walking and cycling. So yeah, I think I agree with what they were saying. Thanks.
Adding on to that, making data-driven arguments and accurate estimations of benefits really important, especially having estimation tools early in the project phase to convince decision makers. And benefits of walkability tend to be underestimated. So how do we accurately capture the full range of benefits that it can provide?
Thank you so much. And definitely there are a lot of great tools and methodologies for evaluation. So we'll hopefully compile some of those key resources in a follow-up to this webinar. But with that, I just wanted to thank everyone for this wonderful session. I hope you learned a lot. I thank Qiuyang for moderating, Mayor Trevino for your presentation, of course, our ITDP colleagues, and also Jordi as well from UN Habitat, Madi, Venu, and everyone else, Gasha, of course. So again, we'll share the recordings and we'll see you at the next session, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.